their biggest champion. I would make Eric Beckyard look like a peon. I would be the biggest advocate for the woo if I truly experienced something like this.
Right.
Which is why I don't understand why so many people don't go that route. Experiencing something that is definitely not the norm, to me, would be life-changing.
Right.
And what is the cause for it? What is the reason behind it? How is that happening? Question yourself. Am I on drugs? Am I a paranoid schizophrenic? Have I been exposed to something that I don't know? Like, for instance, a roofie, a drug. We don't know what's happening to create such an auditory hallucination.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, that's what that is when it comes to mind speak. Now, granted, there are a large number of healthy individuals who've, reported hearing voices in their head. And I don't know if it's their voice. I don't have the answer to that. Yeah. But I choose to live in the real world until that experience happens to me.
Yeah.
Or a distinguished Bigfoot researcher like Peter Byrne or Mantra Freitas, Kathy Strain, for example. If one of them were to say, hey, Richter, I got to tell you, I was out there at, the Wood Ape organization in Wichita Mountains in Oklahoma, and I heard a voice in my head that was not my own. If I were to hear that from Kathy Strain, who is an archaeologist in real life, that carries a lot of weight than some dude that hung out with that Kiani Woony Wani Woody guy.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
What?
So until we have someone with credentials like Dr. Meldrum come forward and say, well, I just experienced something that lends itself to mind speak. Okay, we're getting that from someone with credentials, not just some trucker.
Yeah. Well, but do you not think that this is one of those things that is interesting? Have you thought or heard of, I think that what happened with sort of Ron Moorhead, is a interesting idea in some ways, because when he started to say that he started to experience, and let's say I don't think he's ever said that he experienced mind speak. I don't think he has, but when he starts to say, I'm hearing these different different sounds out in the woods that shouldn't be there, and types of things, and they seem to have ability to cloak or disappear or manifest into something else, then that is a certain degree. But those are not, I understand, sort of quote unquote PhD professors who are studying that says that. So, but do you think that, say for example, if Todd Disotell while you were doing the show, even if he had experienced Bigfoot, do you think how do you think he would handle it? You've talked to him several times, and you've had him as a guest on that. How do you think he would necessarily kind of, in your opinion, be able to deal with? Do you think that would be something that he would want to talk
I know him well enough to know that he would say, this is interesting. What is the cause of this voice? He would take it from a totally scientific approach and question, maybe he smoked something he shouldn't have. Maybe he drank too many beers that day. You know what I mean? He would question everything first before even pointing the finger at it being a Sasquatch. You have to check off everything on your list first before you even consider the impossible. Now, you mentioned Ron Moorhead, and Ron Moorhead recently wrote a book about quantum physics and how it applies to Bigfoot, and how there's an energy vibration. And some say that that energy vibration is why Bigfoot cloaks. Okay, if my body were to vibrate at a different frequency right now, I would die. Yes, our cells are all vibrating at a certain frequency, but too much of a frequency, you could pass right through the wall. Therefore, you would not reform as a person on the outside of the wall. You would be certain death. So unless Bigfoot is truly a spiritual creature, no animal on this earth can change its vibration frequency to disappear.
Yeah. Well, but it is interesting, though, from a certain standpoint. It's it does amaze me sometimes, some of the things that our government spends money on, for example, you know, and what's interesting is that, you know, I think for a long time in the, you know, late 70s and maybe until the end of the Cold War, which probably means they're still doing it, you know, they were developing sort of remote viewers and people who, you know, could maybe supposedly, you know, see things from a distance or travel to different things like that. So, I mean, you would think, and I don't know, but you would think that from a certain standpoint, they wouldn't develop that put that kind of resources into it if it wasn't in some way that they thought was possible. Now, it might have been all the big boondoggle and things like that, but it is interesting to, you know, sort of understand that, you know, with the idea of the disclosure of the UFOs, for example, and maybe some of these different things that I think we may be doing or may not be doing in you know in space and sort of space programs and things, because I always have a thing with the idea of the Space Force that, you know, we wouldn't say we were going to make a Space Force if we didn't already have one, and we need to explain how we've you know how we've got one. I mean, because a Space Force is not something you can just strike up from scratch. You know, you're not going in your backyard and building a Space Force. You know, you kind of already have to have one. You know, but you know, is that something that concerns you from that point? Just to step away from Bigfoot for a second?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I'm pretty grounded, and I believe anything is possible, but we still live in a real world.
Yeah.
And those rules must and absolutely apply. When you are sick and go to the doctor, are you having the forest friends all hold hands around your bed, or are you going to have the doctor come and give you his scientific approach to cure what's ailing you? You're going to go with science.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go with a message from Kwani, so I can't say his name to save my life, about Sasquatch. No way.
Wow. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's one of those things where I think people need to realize that in a certain aspect, a certain degree, that, you know, even if you're going to go into sort of quote unquote holistic medicine, you know, don't stop taking your your prescriptions.
Right.
You know,
explore all avenues.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so,
especially when it comes to your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. However, here's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
There is an individual in Oregon who used to be a psychologist. We know him as Matthew Johnson. And on my YouTube channel, he is pretty much like a nemesis of mine, how I challenge him on everything he has ever said and done in regards to Bigfoot feeling him up and healing his prostate issues.
Right.
Okay. Taking people to be healed by their forest friends, their imaginary Bigfoot friends, is dangerous. Altitude, for example, the hiking that might be required. And for someone like him and his means to give people a false hope of Bigfoot healing them, and especially when people are desperate for whatever they can have that will help their ailment, whether it's cancer, etc., you know, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And a line should be drawn. No, Bigfoot will not heal you or cure you. It's not a doctor.
Yeah.
It's a creature that wants to be left alone.
Yeah.
It's a creature that's survived this long without having any human interaction for the most part.
Well,
look at.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All I'm going to say on that is one thing, right? Which is that if people take a look at some different things, placebo effect is a real thing, and what I'm going to say is that people putting themselves into a positive mindset of how their outcome could be is a genuine healing technique. It's something that I think a lot of shaman do. I think a lot of medicine people do it that way. And so what they're doing is in a way, is they, you find this a lot in times when people, they didn't know what was wrong with people. For example, during the plague, I don't think that, you even if you had sort of the placebo effect's not going to work. But in a situation where you put yourself into a positive mindset and, and believing that these things are happening, that's that. Now, that being said, I've been up the mountain with Matthew Johnson, and I will say this: I didn't stop taking my insulin, because I was going to die, and so, that's one of those things that, I have to be realistic about these things too, because, as a person who has had a chronic illness a lot of their life, and knows that, without insulin, I'm 24 hours away from, kicking the bucket. I'm not gonna do that. So, but what I'm saying is from a standpoint of experiencing something, and I didn't go up there to be healed or anything like that. So I'm not going to address it, but I'm just going to say that from a situation of that, I went up there to document what I experienced, which is very interesting, because you do read a lot of people's reports, and they're not really that detailed as I was. And in other words, whenever you read my sort of testimonial, I say, this is where I met him. This is the time I met him. This is what I ate. I didn't drink. I didn't take drugs. I'm on these prescription drugs for, I do have PTSD, so I do take a antidepressant, and I take that medicine every day, and I didn't take anybody's food, or I didn't, everything I brought up there was packaged in my own. I didn't take an unsealed drink. Nobody gave me anything, for to take or anything like that. So at least in that point in time, that when somebody can read that, then they can say to yourself, okay, well, maybe it's this fact. I put down what temperature it was, what time of the year it was, what altitude it was, and everything else. So somebody could say, this is a strange thing that happened, but it could be explained by this type of scenario. Like, it's on a quartz formation or whatever. And some people think that quartz holds EMF. And so I'm hallucinating because of high magnetic fields or something, which is fine. If somebody wants to say that, that's cool. But, then they have the ability to do that. But I don't think a lot of people say that. They just say, okay, well, I was up there and it was magical and everything was cool, and that's a little bit different. You've got to take a look at it from a standpoint of explain what happened, make contemporaneous notes, and then at that point in time, if you're going to present it that way, be willing to be criticized for what you're saying, because you are putting yourself out there for critique, and that's why you have to take contemporaneous notes.
Yeah, well, also at the same time, since we're discussing Matthew Johnson and the situation regarding him, he also equates himself to John the Baptist.
Did he say that?
Sasquatch.
Did he say that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that's comparing yourself to a religious figure, symbol. That's kind of kooky, for lack of a better word. And he doesn't like to be challenged.
Yeah.
And it's his word over science. It's his word over yours, and especially over mine. That's disturbing. There's no welcome debate.
Yeah.
And is that his arrogance? Is it his brain injury? I don't know. Point is, giving people false hope like that, especially out in the wild, in the woods, at a remote location that he does not share with everybody. It's not like it's a campsite that we could all go to. He keeps it hidden because the trolls on Facebook, like Coalition, will find out where it's at. It's still silly.
Yeah.
If I was truly experiencing the gift of Sasquatch and it healed my bronchitis and my allergies, all right, I'd want it to heal Kevin's what do you take the insulin because you're diabetic. I want Bigfoot to cure your diabetes.